All right, very happy to have Padraig Lynch from Paddy Talks Golf, a very cool, interesting, and awesome podcast where he talks all about Ireland, the culture, and the golf world, and everything else in between. So, Padraig, thanks for joining us on the Golf 360.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
We met through, as most people do now, through the internet. You were kind enough to put a post up on Instagram and tag me in it, and I believe for golf podcasts in Ireland, you were somewhere around the fourth most popular. And how I made the list of any list where it's most popular, I have no idea. But I think I was eighth. But I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's nice to know that information is spreading around the world. And I was very appreciative and that you did that and kind of an introduction to where we are today.
No panic at all. I suppose I don't look at the numbers too often. I try not let views or downloads or streams or charts. I kind of like my golf game. I don't want to dig too deeply into the stats or to drive myself silly, especially when it comes to my golf game. But I do it sporadically just to see, are we trending up or trending down? There's a lot of parallels to golf with business or sales or podcasts, or if you're trying to improve at something, basically. So there's a lot of parallels to be drawn across all walks of life. But yeah, so when I see it I might check the chart maybe once a month, maybe every couple of months. And it's nice to see, me and you, I do it from my spare room. I do it on my own. I'm the booker, I'm the interviewer, I'm the editor, I'm the producer, I'm the marketer, I do the social posts. And then to be ranking up there with the likes of No Laying Up and Rick Seals and Golf Channel's myriad of productions and radio shows, master production, it's just a nice little pat in the back sometimes for myself. And for your good self to see that, you're playing with the big boys and girls, as they say.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's where society has gone in general with the advancement of technology, at least for the good side of the technological world, is that somebody like you or myself can be very small. We're as you mentioned, we're everything from president to janitor and host and tech support. And even though I have no zero about tech, but all those things included. And so long as you put out something that's interesting and that people want to hear, you can compete with the mega productions of the Golf Channel or Golf Magazine or golf.com or whoever it is. But it's fun. I've had a lot of fun doing mine. I'm sure you've had a lot of fun doing yours, meeting a lot of different people, learning a lot of different things. So it's very cool to meet someone else who's in a similar boat, so to speak.
Thanks, but I think you have better credentials than I do when it comes to the golf world. Given your background, I suppose my background is I just love golf and love talking about it. So instead of talking the ear off my wife, I started a podcast instead.
Was she kind of the inspiration that said, "Look, you need to find someone else to talk to about this stuff because I'm tired of hearing about it"?
No. I suppose I was trying to get better at golf myself, and I was watching a lot of YouTube, and of course the same culprits come up there: Rick Shears, Peter Finch, Andy Carter, me and my golf, those folks, the Golfholics, stateside. So I was doing a bit of that myself, or taking an ocean at a time to edit YouTube videos, and I was listening to podcasts both for work, for high performance, and a couple of golf ones as well. And I said, look, editing audio will be much leaner, much easier, quicker than 4 to 6 hours on a YouTube video. So that's how it started. And there was a kind of a gap, in podcasts on this side of the Atlantic in terms of someone addressing golf in Ireland specifically, and kind of what No Laying Up do now with their tourist sauce and kind of visiting areas and documenting it. No one really doing that for Ireland. So it's something I do kind of people in and around golf. With a focus on Ireland, yes, but if it's something that I want to learn more about, it could be Speed Stick, so I those guys on, or Trackman, so I had Michael Malone, who's EMEA sales director for Trackman, on a couple of years ago. So if it's of interest to me, and I think it might be of interest to people who follow me on social or people who listen to the podcast, I'll try and have those people on. So I don't, and I won't, and I don't want to be that kind of stereotypical podcast show that previews tournaments, reviews tournaments, and kind of in line with the betting scenario. It's not. I don't follow the tour that deeply, and I don't have that vested interest on it week to week. My ears perk up on the big tournaments, yes. So, and where I have an interest, I look to do a show about it. Basically, it's a very selfish, self-centered, egotistical podcast I run.
Yeah, but as you said, I think there's enough of the big outlets cover the tournaments on a regular basis, and I think that bucket is filled, so to speak, with enough attention to it. It's like, why would you want to do something? I don't do any of that stuff either. I've had friends say, "Oh, I need to come on your podcast. We should have a Monday wrap-up show," and I say, "Why? There's enough of them out there." My whole reason for starting this show was I was a huge podcast fan. I was a big Tim Ferriss fan going way back to his 4-Hour Work Week. Then, of course, started following Rogan like it seems like everybody in the world does. And as I was listening to some of the things
I've never listened to an episode of Rogan. I've not had it on purpose, I just never have. They're too long for me. They're like 2 hours long, and I can't. I have 2 kids. I have a wife. I have a full-time job, and I try to do this on the side. If I don't have the time to listen to Rogan.
I usually try to listen. If I go to the gym for say an hour, I'll try to listen to part of it, and then when I go back the next day or 2 days later, I'll try to finish it off. That's kind of how I've picked apart the Rogan shows.
Yeah. No, I need to listen to angry music in the gym. I can't be listening to people chatting. Maybe in the
I was sitting here in particular. There you go. On the it was more back then. I was more a Tim Ferriss fan, and I was watching as he brought these very interesting people who were experts in their field that nobody might have ever heard of because they were so engrossed in their profession and their craft. And I got to thinking, I said, well, I know a lot of people in the golf world that in a very similar way that you've never heard of, but are kind of, in some instances, the brains behind the scenes. And I said, well, I should just try it and see how it goes. Now, some of them I haven't been able to get on yet because they're not really self-promoters and they don't like to push their stuff out there. And I said, you don't understand. That's not what this is about. It's just about us sitting down and talking about the same things that we talk about for the last decade or 20 years. So that was the genesis of mine. And then it just, I had to get it out of my head. It was bouncing around in my head for so long. I said, I'm going to do this. If it crashes and burns, I don't really care. But I've got to get it out of my head to make space for some other shit to get in there and cause me problems.
And I don't know if there's something in my head. I suppose I'm always doing something, in terms of like keeping myself busy. It was YouTube, like the YouTube thing, and now the podcast thing is kind of to keep me honest in getting better at golf myself. In that, I had to go out and practice to make a YouTube video. Right, to then post it. So it was kind of a holistic affair. And now the podcast has kind of branched on from that in terms of I'm just looking to follow my interest in learning about stories in golf, to be honest. And especially with people in golf. So it could be especially like PGA pros in Ireland, around the country. And because a lot of people who look to get into the game or want to get better at the game, it's in Ireland anyway. It's still very much a word of mouth scenario. Like we do have internet, there is Google, but again, I would say 90% of PGA pros in this country don't utilize the internet well enough in broadcasting that they give lessons or they're based here. and they're getting better at it now, of course. But to go back to my point, I'm getting a lot of questions in my daily work life. Oh, you play golf? Where should I get lessons? You know, so the podcast has helped to try, and I love having PGA professionals on, your local PGA pro on, to explain their story in golf, how they started, what's their focus on teaching, like how do they teach? You know, are they technical, or do they focus more on body movements, or how do they communicate? So like people then, you know, a couple of pros have got on to me since going, you know, since I was on, the bookings have increased because people hear what they're about and don't necessarily have to spend their money on and review the first lesson to ascertain was it good or not. So that's helped. But also, like, I love interviewing greenkeepers, finding out more about how golf courses work. Like, I'm an engineer. I love finding out how things work, right? So I was lucky enough to interview the assistant superintendent in Adair, Manor, the Manor at Adair, host the Ryder Cup in a couple of years' time, hosted JP McManus, and learn all about their approach and why they approach it that way, and why is that grass there and this grass over there, and how it's designed, and how, like, where's the pitfalls. And so it's that's what I'm interested in, you know. Like, something I learned this year was, in a lot of instances, you know, greenkeepers, directors of golf, this is their job. You know, this is what their entire passion is focused around, is presenting a golf course. While us golfers, it's our hobby, you know. So we gotta manage. Golfers have to manage their expectations. You know what I mean? Especially in Ireland. Like, I'd say there's about 4 inches of rain this morning outside that window of mine here. So a greenkeeper knew that was happening today and has allocated and prepared the golf course as such. You know, while us golfers will rock up tomorrow because it's fine and be like, oh my God, it's so soft. Like, Michael isn't doing a good job because it's soft underfoot. But we didn't remember there was like half an ocean felt the day before, you know?
I always found it fascinating. I always found it fascinating that golf originated. I mean, yes, some people in Scotland originated there. Some people in Ireland say it originated there. So I'll leave that argument to all you guys on that side.
Nearly Queen of Scots.
Okay, it is Scotland. Okay, but and you look at that, and and it has turned into a warm weather sport for the most part. I mean, it's a summer sport, and the season, so to speak, for the major tours is in the summer. And it's like, well, how did they come up with a sport like this in a cooler climate where it's raining all the time and it's windy? Like, how difficult was your life that you would rather be outside in the rain coming down sideways and sometimes in cooler weather playing golf than you would whatever else was going on in your life at that time?
Oh, I think when golf was founded, people were of tougher character and skin, to be fair. But it's not a summer sport in Ireland. It is for some people, but I would like my approach to golf is like skin is waterproof. You know, especially if there's a scorecard in my back pocket, I ain't walking in. You know, and I actually prefer tougher conditions because I know X amount are going to walk in, X amount won't be able to battle the elements, so I only have to beat Y amount. Like that Brooks Koepka approach is me versus like 6 people in the field today because it's raining and windy. You know, so since junior golf, that's how a lot of Irish golfers would look at it. I think, you know, once it gets tough, like this is my opportunity to go win something, as opposed to, oh, there's a cloud coming, I better go in. You know, that's just not how we look at it.
You know, I was in mental, physical shape for that as a kid because I grew up in Michigan, and by this time of year, it's cold, it's rainy, it's shitty outside, but I would still go play because of the things you said. There's not that many people on the golf course anymore, so you could go play all day long and hit it wherever you wanted to, and it was you and nature, and maybe you saw a few other people out there. But as I now live in a warm climate in South Carolina, and I've become pampered. Like in the winter here, I have the rule: if it's not 50 and sunny, I'm not playing.
Is you have to come over here. You have to come over here in
Oh, I definitely.
or now October, and you'll see some different ball flights after sure.
I got to ask you one question. I had a friend who was he had been over there a number of times, and he passed about 2 years ago. But he had told me the Guinness plant that I believe that's in Ireland. I could be completely off. I don't know Guinness very well. Okay, he said that going back however many 100, 200 years when Guinness started in the original plant, which they still occupy, that they signed a lease that was for $5 a year in perpetuity. Is that true, or is that just hearsay?
To my knowledge, having been to the storehouse a couple of times, you're testing now, was I listening or was I drinking? It's a 1,000-year lease, is my understanding.
Okay.
I'll have to Google it. It's a 1,000-year lease from 1759. So there's a few fair years left on that term.
And is it $5 a year?
I've no idea. But at this stage, you look at Guinness now and the footprint it has in Dublin and the Liberties area, it's definitely scaled out from that initial footprint. So yeah, far from me to even guess at the commercial lease criteria of the Guinness and Diageo enterprise it is now.
My brother was over in Ireland, I want to say 15 years ago. And back then we would drink a fair amount of Guinness. And when he came home, he said, I'll never drink Guinness here again. He said, it's not even close to the same of what it is in Ireland.
I've been to the States a couple of times. You just have to do your homework. There are a couple of locations in New York which do it very well. I'll send you a text after with the names. And I've only been New York, Boston.
Okay.
I was in Jersey this August. Didn't have a pint of Guinness. Did have some Michelob Ultras, which are quite tame. There's a couple of places in San Francisco which have a good pint of Guinness, but yeah, it doesn't travel well at the best of times. But like the golf swing, it's all about setup and get the basics right. But yeah, it doesn't travel well. But even in the storehouse, I would say the storehouse is one of the worst pints of Guinness you can have. So easy to know I'm not sponsored by Guinness saying something like that. But yeah, you just want a short draw. And any of your listeners who know anything about pouring pints, you need a short draw between the shortest line possible between the keg and the tap. That's what you want.
Well, there's everybody that was tuning in to learn about golf, where we're talking a little bit about alcohol and how to pour the best pint of Guinness. So you get a whole lot. That's why we call it 360. You get a whole full spectrum of learning information on this show.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. You get the details on the best pints interviewing a fella from Ireland, huh?
So tell everybody a little bit more about your show, because it focuses on Ireland, the golf scene, the culture, and just about everything else from the limited shows that I've listened to. But just give us a little more insight to your show and what it covers.
Yeah, I suppose it's stories in golf. It's what it is. Predominantly, yes, from the island of Ireland, interviewing everyone from the greenkeeper to the director of golf, captain of the golf club, professional players, the top amateurs in the game, locations. So you've different tiers of golf in Ireland as you would in every country. But I suppose given the history of both design, architecture, and now tourism for golf in Ireland, if you play golf, no matter where in the world you are, you probably know of or have played the marquee courses in Ireland. So you're talking my home club, Lahinch, which I grew up in playing in, and the southwest of Ireland, and maybe a couple around Dublin, and the K Club when the Ryder Cup was there in 2006, I think. Mm-hmm. I suppose my show is kind of showcasing the rest of what's available, both from a golfing perspective. So it could be Ross Lair in the southeast of the country, or somewhere like Castle Rock, which is 15 minutes from Portrush. But it's championship level golf course that, footfall is discovering now, both thanks to golf tourism boards and stuff like that. But also, like, as a person in Ireland, I didn't venture far past the low stone wall of my own golf club to play other courses in Ireland. So, like, there's an audience and a market there for Irish people to go discover what's on literally your own front door. Within 3 hours, I can pretty much be anywhere in Ireland, bar maybe the northwest. You can add a couple hours to that drive from where I'm located. So, but I'm like, especially through COVID, there was nigh on, we were shut down for, I suppose, the guts. So there was no golf for the most of 2020. There was a couple of months there, grey area. And then 2021, just last year, it was May to kind of December. So this was the first kind of full year in 3 years. So for 2 years, people weren't going to the cheap resorts in Portugal or Spain for their 8 rounds of golf in 5 days for €300 in a 2-star hotel, right? Where it's more about the lagers than it is about the long drives. People had to look in Ireland, and a lot of people played the likes of Tralee and Ballybunion and Dukes and up in Donegal, the Cairn tennis courts for the first time. And they're like, oh my God, these are unbelievable. And we didn't pay the €200 or such because there was no tourists. So we had our Golf Ireland. If you had a handicap with Golf Ireland, you got a rate, a Golf Union of Ireland rate. So people were like, this is unbelievable. But I suppose what shocked, or what took a lot of people, Irish people, by surprise, playing their own courses in Ireland, was the experience. I would have grown up in Lahinch being part of that experience as both a member and a caddy for nigh on 10 years, in making sure, Hank or Bill or Chuck or Mary or Belinda or whoever was playing that day had the best day possible, and couldn't say a bad thing about Lahinch, whether it was 30-mile-an-hour winds or sideways rain, was to give them a good time, jokes and stories and make fun of different lies and stances and hold putts. But Irish people didn't really experience that until the last couple of years, and kind of are more in tune with why it costs, €250 to play a Tralee or whatever. Because it's not just for the golf, it's for the experience and I suppose the level of service you get, I mentioned Adair Manor. There's a reason Adair Manor is, hundreds of euro a night in a hotel. No one really makes that comparison between a 5-star hotel and a 3-star hotel. It's the different level of service. The same can be said for golf courses in this country. And I say in this country because in America, it's pretty much private country clubs in the main, right? To put a big high-level overview of golf in America, it's relatively closed-door affair, unless you're lucky enough to have whatever open parks or courses or council parks near to you. In Ireland, you can play if you've the money, you can play anywhere you want. And I don't mean €1,000. You can play anywhere you want for a couple €100 at the most, which is not like a lot of countries. Having lived abroad, lived in Italy for a couple of years, and even in Italy, golf is seen as a pretty elitist sport, where based on their economy and all these other reasons, a lot of people just don't play. But in Ireland, a lot of Irish people discovered that the golf in Ireland is quite good. Definitely over the last 2 years. So yeah, I cover that in my podcast.
Kind of what's right under your nose instead of trying to look and see what else is out there around to go investigate.
Yeah, like for me, I prefer, instead of spending €600 or €800 for a week in Spain in a 3-star hotel and not great golf. I haven't done it before, but looking at pictures and speaking with other people who have done those type of holidays, that the quality of golf isn't great. It's a sun holiday with golf thrown in, rather than if I went to the northwest of Ireland and stayed in Airbnbs or B&Bs or a couple of hotels and played 4 or 5 of the best links courses known to man for pretty much the same money. You know which one I'm picking.
Yeah, exactly. So the tourist season would I'm assuming would be June through August, the peak of summer. Would that be fair to say that you're getting a lot of people from, say, the U.S. come over and other countries?
Yeah, like that'd be peak season. You're looking at golf May to middle of October, is when it's playable. You know, it can be raining on any day, but generally, actually, it's good in the main. Yes, you'll have 1 or 2 days where it's a day for a high stool, and hopefully that aligns with your rest day of your tour. But generally, yeah, May to October, with the peak months hotel wise and price wise being your stereotypical, July and August. But from speaking with my mates who are still caddies in Lahinch and the new caddies in Lahinch would be, there is plenty of footfall from April right through to October this year. So, and I believe many courses for next year are booked out already. Given, there was a lot of overflow from COVID here. So they're still dealing with that next year in terms of people having to forego their tour and then move on to the next season. So there's a bit of that involved, I think.
When is the best time, in your opinion, from somebody who grew up there to visit? And I'll give you an example. So where I live in South Carolina, just off Hilton Head. Hilton Head is very big in the summertime because it's a beach resort / golf destination. It's very big in the spring because there's the Masters, and Augusta's only 2 hours from here. And then we have the RBC Heritage the week after. Those are obviously peak times. But I tell people who want to visit, I say mid to late May is usually exceptionally good if you don't want to fight crowds, because kids are going back to school, so nobody's really going to come on vacation. And then the next time is usually basically the month of October, because kids are now back in school, and but the weather is ideal. It's 70 to 80 degrees every day, and it very rarely rains. I don't think we've had rain until 2 days ago for 3.5 weeks. So is there a time in Ireland that is off-peak season that is really ideal, or is it, no, if you're going to go, you just got to fight the crowds?
No, like any tourist season, that there's a peak and a mid and a low season. My recommendation, both from a value perspective and weather perspective, I would say, the last 2 weeks of May through the first 2 weeks of June. So that kind of month, if you will, and then September. And the reason I say that is most of school is still going until middle of June, and school recommences around the last week of August in Ireland, and the same for college students. And the reason I say that is holiday homes, the west of Ireland, there'll be a lot of holiday homes from the east of Ireland. So it's kind of like a mini migration of Irish people from the east to the west coast for the summer season. But also you're a tourist as well. So, but from a weather perspective, it tends to peak, it tends to trend well and be good weather. And we have Indian summers, we call them here, where it could be around, an Indian summer around early May or late April. But generally my rule of thumb is when state exams are on. So we call it the Leaving Cert or Junior Certificate here, or end of year exams. There's always good weather, always, without fail. There's always good weather when state exams are on, and that is end of May or start of June. And when back to school, generally the best weather of the year. That's September. And even then, for like bad weather, it ain't as bad as it is now in the early days of November. That's for sure. Mightn't be shorts weather, but you don't need, I wouldn't say you'd need the thermals on, we'll put it that way.
What are some of the things that the average tourist does not understand, or what are there things to do, say if they have a day off from golf, outside of bellying up at their local pub, that people should take in while they're over there that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think a lot of golf tours are pretty intense for Ireland, and they might play, 8 courses in 6 days, which is intense. And you better bring the foam rollers and massage guns and maybe lay off the porter if that's your type of trip, so that you can enjoy it and enjoy the golf.
Right.
That you're looking at, if that's your type of trip, 8 rounds in 6 days, or even 8 rounds in 10 days, that's still, 200,000 steps in a week. And I wouldn't do 20,000 steps a day, let alone daily for a week. My advice would be a round to a round and a half a day, right? Afternoon tee times. So try and get tee times between 12 and 4. And I'll explain in a minute, because that means 2 things. One, less traffic on the golf course. So if you tee off between 2 and 4 o'clock, most of the time, the golf course looks like you have it to yourself. And you're finishing towards, 7, 8 p.m. It also means that you can afford to have a few jars or a few pints most nights, because you're not teeing off until, the late afternoon. It also means you can do your tourist sites in the morning, when generally there'd be less traffic from tourists. So, for example, in Lahinch, a lot of golfers come to Lahinch and don't go to the Cliffs of Moher, which are 10 minutes drive away, and are nigh on one of the wonders of the world. I think they were trying, like...
And what is that?
UNESCO, it's the Cliffs of Moher. They're 500 meter high, one of the largest cliffs in Europe. Sheer drops. There's a couple of castles on top, and it's just a stretch of coastline in North Clare. And there's a 1 hour walk you can do all along the cliff edge with a coffee shop at either side. So it's almost like it was made for tourists. But that's an example of maybe 30% of visitors to Lahinch go do that. And it's just up the road, somewhere down in Dingle. Cian Shibale is a fantastic golf course, and there's one of the leading whiskies in the world is distilled in the town, 10 minutes away. So they're actually working on a conjunction. You play. Oh, you play a Dingle, you get a tour, and vice versa.
You got to tell us the name.
Cian Shibale is the golf club.
You got to tell us the name of it.
Dingle whiskey, believe it or not, is the name of the whiskey. So little things like that, where if you're on an intense tour, you miss out on Irish experiences like that and you still have your pub time in the evening, little things like, where is it? Skellig, the Skellig Chocolate Company. We have our own Willy Wonka chocolate factory in the west coast of Ireland, that has won awards. And that stretch of coastline was where Star Wars was filmed, So yeah, there's loads to see.
Is that right?
Outside of your golf course in Ireland these days, and that's just southwest. You go up northwest or Portrush, and up north there, you've one of the oldest distilleries in the world in Bushmills. Bushmills, 20 minutes north of Royal Portrush, where the Open was. You have, if you're into Game of Thrones, that's where it was all filmed. It was up in the northeast of the country. So my advice would be do a little bit more research into top 10 things to see in this county where I'm going, not just the golf club.
Do you have an episode of top 10 things to do when you're not golfing in different segments of Ireland?
I do with different people. I had a chat with Jed Sprague, who a good friend of mine, actually. We met through Link Soul, of all places. They were opening a store in Oakland when I was over for work, and we had a chat and a few drinks, and next thing you know, he's in Ireland playing golf, and I'm in San Francisco again playing golf or whatever. But I sat down with Jed after his and his family came over for his dad's birthday golf tour, basically. His dad played Major League Baseball for a number of years and was an Olympian, and Jed's mother was an Olympian, and Jed was a pretty decent baseball player. But I sat down with Jed, and they're a pretty sporty family, and we went through, the top 10 courses and the top 5 things to bring with you and the top 5 things not to bring with you. And yeah, there's a few episodes like that. 100%. I sat down, a good episode actually, for your listeners would be, I sat down with Matt Janella, Matt Adams, and Tom Coyne.
I heard that
that's
one.
The one. If
I listened to that one 2 weeks ago.
Trip, you might put it in the show notes. I'll showcase that one actually on my back nine episode for next week, maybe. For anyone planning a trip to Ireland, that's the one that we cover. We cover pretty much everything in that one.
And what would be some of the key pieces that you took out of that people can grab right now as they pause this one, they go to look at that one? What should they go to look for that really stuck out in that episode?
I would say Old Head of Kinsale, right? Was Matt Adams mentioned this one. He's been there a lot, and a lot of people pick that out as a golf course for loads of, like, it's on a peninsula. There's cliff edges and cliff tee shots and cliff bunker shots, I believe. I haven't played it yet. So people would go purely for the golf course. But before there was a golf course there was centuries of history. So Matt mentioned, just inside the gates, there's a little castle. Go into the castle, go downstairs, and there's inscribings there from thousands of years ago.
Like 1108, isn't it? Like you had to look up under something. You could see like 1108 when the place was built. That's amazing.
Stuff like that, and even in Adair Manor, where I've been a few times now. Luckily, I've played it once, but I was there for the JP McManus. Even around that estate, there's items from history, but also little things like for kids, fairy walks and fairy forts and stuff like that. That you can. Whilst you play, your family can enjoy that, or maybe you do with them afterwards. So there are a couple of nuggets. But if you don't want to listen to me on that episode, I'd say ring your golf course ahead of time and say, look, I'm looking to really experience your course. What are 3 or 4 things you recommend me to check out while I'm there? I'd really advise people to go do that.
I agree because as I was coming up, I always worked the bag drops as a kid or caddied, and then even when I moved to Hilton Head, and then you work your way up to assistant and teaching pro, head pro, whatever your director of golf position is. But I whenever I would go visit places, my family or girlfriend, whoever would say, well, let's go ask the concierge where we should go eat breakfast or where we should go to dinner. I say, no, go ask the valet. Because the valets are the ones who are going to these places on a nightly basis. Usually, they're going to know where all the local places are. They're not going to go to the tourist promoted or tourist traps, so to speak. They're going to know the local, very good places to hang out, which is what I think a lot of people are interested in. Maybe they go to a couple big, well-known spots, but I think they like to, especially in today's corporatized world where you can go, at least in this country, no matter what state now you go to, there's all the big corporate box stores. And I think people like to go find out what's local and different from where they're from. Whether it's a coffee shop or whether it's a pub or a special sandwich or a special breakfast or something.
No, I agree with you. And like if I hosted a couple of Americans, Patrick and Michael Geese actually, listened to the podcast. They played Lahinch and they said they were about when I'd be around to play. So I went down, I'd play with them. And like that, I treated it like I was in my caddy days, and they were like, oh, where should we go to eat? And how can we get a taxi? Because we don't want to drive out if it's not in town. And like that, and you can ask your caddy or the caddies or the barman in the club in Ireland, just ask and you'll save loads of time waiting. And B, you'll probably get a good place.
Mm-hmm.
This is how small Ireland is. I rang my cousin who has a taxi and said, look, Patrick and Michael Geese will be finished golf at X time. Will you collect them? Yeah, no problem. And will you bring them out to, out to Doolin, out to McGann's pub, because that's decent Guinness. No problem. And they'll be there for an hour and a half. Will you collect them and bring them home? So like with one phone call, half their evening is sorted to go experience somewhere 10 minutes from Lahinch that isn't super touristy. Not that Lahinch is, but somewhere really off the beaten track, for somewhere locals go, and they actually, there was Cayley music happened to be on, which isn't in Lahinch too often, so they got to experience that. So ask your caddy, ask the barman, and they'll put you in the right direction in Ireland for sure, because they don't want to let you down. And more often than not, they're supporting their family, their relative, or one of their best friends in their business.
Exactly. The two of the oldest restaurants in Hilton Head, the Riley's restaurant, good Irish family from up in Boston. They've been around, I believe they're coming up, if they haven't gotten it, about 50 years they've been open here, which for here is a long time. And the island was developed more or less in the late 60s. And they also owned a restaurant called Enchiladas. But what they did back to when I moved here 30 years ago, and they had it going prior to that, was they would give all the local golf pros, whether you're an assistant, you're a pro, you're at the bag drop, if you're in the golf industry, and all the tennis pros, because tennis was very big back then as well, 15%, I believe it was 15%. They gave you a VIP card. So the result was, in the off season, all the tennis and golf people would hang out at their restaurants, and you got to meet a lot of locals that you couldn't meet when you were in season because it was so busy. But then when people would ask you, when you're cleaning their clubs at the end of the round, where do you go to get lunch? Where do you go to get dinner? Where do you go to hang out and watch a ball game or whatever? And you'd say, okay, go to Riley's or Enchiladas, because you knew that place and you knew the atmosphere and you knew it was good and you knew it was local. And they've been very successful, not simply because of that, but that's just to kind of try to illustrate how they develop their culture instead of going out and spending tons of money on advertising in a newspaper. But yeah, it is very cool to know the local spots to hit like that. Another one here in Bluffton that would be called, it's a little diner. It's called the Squat and Gobble. Right? It's probably seats maybe 35. Right. It probably seats maybe 40 people at a time. And that place has been there about 40 years.
No, it's the same. And you'll find like a lot of
so it's a great
attractions, pubs, restaurants, hotels in Ireland are there. They're passed on from generation to generation, So if you get the chance to look in, if they have a visitor book, go back in it. You never know. Your granddad might have stayed there years and years ago, or they might be your granddad. If you're from America,
exactly,
it might be your great, whatever.
Well, that might be a whole segment of your business, so to speak, that you're building, your platform that you can provide. Hey, everybody, here, if you want to subscribe to our channel, here's the goods. Here's the place if you're going to go into this part of Ireland. Here's if you're going to go to this part, and just provide that.
I look at now and then, like for now, I would get those questions and I'd steer them. Well, where do you want to go? And I'd steer them to John McLaughlin Northwest Golf Tours. They take care of up there, or if they're looking for, we want to go. We're in Dublin for a week and we want to play 3 rounds of golf. Can you help us out? I'd say, well, actually, no, but you're best to go to Car Golf. Marty and Co will take great care of you. You don't have to be here for a 10-day tour. If it's a bit of golf and an Irish experience, then they're your people. Or if it's down in like the Southwest, it'd be, Tom Kennedy. That's right. For the moment, it's kind of referrals, like, because I'm just being nice. There's no official agreements or commercial for me, because I'm not interested. If you follow me and you think I give good info, then feel free to ask, and I put you down and put you in touch with hopefully the right people who I know will take care of you.
Well, I think that's the key, because trust, as far as media in today's world, which is probably at an all-time low. And I would have to say one of the factors that allows people like you and I to make advancements in having a podcast, because people are searching for information that is good, number one, that is trustworthy, probably 1B. And if you do something like that and you keep it trustworthy and not take compensation maybe for it, then people will have, it'll grow, I think, a lot faster. I think once you start getting compensation involved, people start to question it, at least in the culture of the global spectrum today. That seems to be, trust is a very, very valuable commodity because it's in such limited supply. And if you can provide that and it's good information, that's very valuable.
Yeah, I think so. And something I've actually started is, and I was like, will I do it in like an email and newsletter? Will I do it in like a big WhatsApp or Telegram group, but I was like, I'm in enough WhatsApp groups. So I wouldn't probably enjoy it if I was added to one, but I put it together in a private Facebook group called Beyond Scratch, and it's kind of because I want to go beyond scratch, because if you're off, you need to be off +2 to kind of play in the top amateur events in Ireland. So we're talking about the south of Ireland and the north of Ireland in Portrush, and the west and the east, and the Irish Stroke. Competitions Rory McIlroy would have played in and won multiple times, that Shane Lowry would have won. But if you're going to turn pro from Ireland, Hugh Foley's won a couple now, well, back to back this year. You're up there. But basically, that's like that's the level of golf that is a goal for me. They should be achievable and realistic. So they're achievable because hundreds of people play off +2, right? So it's achievable for them. It hopefully is achievable for me. And realistic in that, people plan to get there. But back to the private Facebook group, in terms of a trusted community and sharing information, it's what I set up maybe 6 weeks ago for followers of the podcast, or listen to the podcast, or social media, or whatever, that if no matter what level of golf you're at, you're always looking to get better, you're always looking to get the right and be steered towards the right information, or the right instructors, or the right books, and not get lost down a rabbit hole of YouTube instruction videos. So I set up this group Beyond Scratch because that's what I'm looking to go to. But through that, it's to set up, like, we've 12 people. I think there's around 100 people in it now. So there's 12 of us coming together to go get a TPI screening and program for the winter time with Robbie Cannon. So Robbie Cannon, for your listeners, is the strength and conditioning coach for a certain Shane Lowry, based in Dublin. Looking at Shane, you might think he needs to do a bit more strength and conditioning, but actually Shane Lowry is one of the most mobile athletes on the planet. By the way, if you looked at his TPI screen, if there was a gold, double gold platinum card for mobility, Shane would get it. Look at him at the top of the backswing, and I understand. So stuff like that. So next it could be around statistics, So through the podcast, thankfully, I can make the ask. I'm not saying I can get, but I can make the ask of someone who's been on, who is the high performance coach for, the high performance elite golfers who represent Ireland, and maybe provide that to people who listen to the podcast, whether in Zoom form, but ideally in a meeting space in person for, 20 quid, for an hour and a half. These are the statistics we track at the top level of the game. This is how you do it. This is the app, or this is the template that you use. These are the habits you need to have around, staying accountable and keeping your stats, I suppose that's what the Facebook group will do as well. So that's what I'm looking to do when we're talking about, trusted and sharing information. That is something I'm looking to continue developing as well.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah, it's a very good idea. And I'm sure that's going to grow as people see what you're doing, and then they implement it themselves, and you have the steps to follow. And hey, when it does get tough, you have a support group, so to speak, that people can, hey, everybody, have you had trouble with this? I'm in a couple similar groups, and then some that aren't private. Like I have an espresso machine. That's my first thing in the morning. And just learning all the different things that people do with these espresso machines to alter the taste, or to modify it, or to try different things. It's very, I tune in on almost a daily basis, at least for a couple of minutes, just to see what the newest and coolest thing is, because it keeps you going. It keeps your interest. So I would not be surprised if it's very successful.
Like anything, it's a little bit of consistency and sharing and spreading of ideas, really. So we'll keep at it.
What is the thing that most surprised you after you started a podcast, or as you got going into it?
That people listened, because I'd be a bit Irish. I'd be a bit Irish in that self-deprecating way. In that, I suppose I was brave or strong are the wrong words, but like I just started doing it, with kind of zero expectation, or of a body of people listening. And the same with Instagram. I'm not in it for the followers, believe it or not. I'll count them, and I recognize milestones in reaching X thousand, because that is mad to me, you know. But I suppose that people listen in the first place, that people shared the podcast with their friends, the fact that there's interest in my opinion, I suppose. I am conscious of having too much of an opinion. I try not to sit in the fence, because, you know, if you're a journalist or if you're representing a media house, you kind of have to watch your T's and dot your I's. I don't, because I am my own boss when it comes to my podcast. I generally just share stories that I'm interested in, and the fact that other people find them interesting is great, you know. But yeah, the fact that people listened is still surprising. The fact that people reach out to me via DM or comment or email is still very, very surprising every time, you know.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learned most from having your own podcast?
What have I learned most? I think not to try and give everybody the shared experience, but to try and give everybody time. So whether that's waiting 2 seconds when we ask the question, to actually ask yourself the question. But I've been lucky enough, I suppose, to meet a few people who listen, and to give them the time to say, oh, how did you listen to it? Where did you listen to it? What was your favorite episode? Both from, because I'm interested in what they're interested in, but also, you know, I do see it as a brand and something that can grow to be something bigger all the time. So if I can reinforce someone who listens already to become a stronger, or I suppose an ambassador for what I do and sharing it more, then that's what I've learned, is that not to be always on, but I suppose just give people time.
Yeah, I used to painstakingly try to prepare for episodes. Like it would be almost 7 to 10 days for the first, let's say, 6 shows I had. Maybe it was the first 10 shows. I don't remember what it was. And I got to thinking, I said, well, if this is supposed to be fun and enjoyable, and half the questions I wasn't asking anyway, because I didn't know when I got started that you know, conversations would go in different directions, and you can't outline a conversation. And then I think it was earlier this year, maybe late last year, I just said, I'll write down maybe half a dozen questions just based off somebody's social media, and wherever the conversation goes, it goes, because I found that to be more realistic, in that what popped into my head as the discussion was going about was usually things that popped into people's head as they listened. So I was listening more and asking questions based off what was being discussed, as opposed to trying to follow an outline. And for my show, it seemed to help quite a bit.
Same, I suppose, yeah, for the first 10 or 20 episodes, I would have done a good, hour or two of Googling and researching and stats if they've played golf. And I kind of figured out that they had all those answers prepared, So I was kind of listening to someone's, yes, this is the answer for that, because I've answered this question 1,000 times, real. So what I do now is, if they've been on a podcast before, I listen to it. And I try not ask those questions. I try and center my podcast around 5 main questions. And then, depending on the answer, I'd ask a follow-on question or two to dig into the detail a little bit. So, like, the first question I try and ask everyone is, what's your earliest memory of golf, Pete? You can answer that if you want.
Oh, yeah, you asking me? Or, I remember specifically. It was I don't remember the very first. I know my dad tried to introduce it to me because he was a big golf fan and fanatic. And then a friend of mine, when I was about 8 years old, had a set of clubs, and we were visiting them in Chicago. And we had nothing to do, so we went to the local field, and we started to hit golf balls. And of course, I enjoyed the challenge, or the frustration. I guess you could, if you can enjoy frustration, golf would be a definition of that, I think. And then it was fun to connect and hit a ball and see it go. And then when we went back home, I went to my dad and said, hey, can we go to the golf course or the driving range and try this again? And that would be my first, where I took the first step, as opposed to just, hey,
so generally
it
goes off that, and then I would ask, well, when did you take it up fully? And that'll go on to when was the next question is generally, when the next kind of high level question is, well, what was the compelling event for you to go all in with, your decision to start a golf company, or your decision to do your PGA, or your decision, that working in golf hospitality was for you, or, you started a golf apparel brand, what was the compelling event for that to happen, that you said, I'm going all in? And that's generally it. And I changed those. Then they're generally the first high level too. And after that, I kind of change now and then. Listening to other podcasts, I might steal a question or two, because it generally digs into something beyond the stereotypical answer. So that's kind of it. And it's more of the first reaction sometimes I get from people in golf, like that work in a golf resort or golf club or have a golf brand, is, I don't, I just want to keep my head down and I just want to do my job. I don't think I'll be good enough on your podcast. And I'm like, well, it isn't a podcast. It's just it's nothing official here. It's just a chat between you and me. Pretend we're in the kitchen and we're having a cup of tea. Yes, there's mics, but you don't need to be happy to be comfortable and just have a chat about you and your life so far and the impact you have in your job. So my favorite question for a director of golf is, what does a director of golf do? Because more often than not, it's different in every club they're at. So one guy could be, it's all sales and marketing, or another woman could be, I manage all the membership and I manage, the visitor experience, and we've KPIs around A, B, and C, or it could be, what, don't really do much. So I just try and ask pretty conversational questions, I guess.
I think those are very simple but very interesting questions to ask, because it really gets people, for the guest, it gets people back to thinking about when they started, because as you become more advanced in something, you get so far away from the genesis that maybe you forget why you got into it in the first place. I'll give you a real quick example of that. Is I remember when my playing career was basically over and I went back into coaching, I'd spent a whole two hours with a lady on short game and hitting shots, let's say pitch shots or high shots over bunkers onto the green. So then we go out on the golf course, and this lady had to be about a 27 handicap or so. And we come to a hole, the 18th hole, there's a small creek, and then there's a green, and she gets up to it and she's deathly afraid. And I'm thinking in my head, we just spent 2 hours. You hit this shot very good. Why is it such a problem? But I couldn't relate to what it was like to be like that. And then it smacked me in the face. It's like, hey, she's just a beginner. I'm coming off playing highly competitive golf. This lady's just a beginner. I had lost that connectedness or relationship between what that actually feels like, because, my thought process was completely different. So I think it connects people back to the beginning, and then it lets them tell their own story without you having to ask any more questions. I think they're very specific and very, very general at the same time. Those are a great way to do it. I'm going to implement that myself.
No problem.
If you don't mind me stealing them. You have time for some emergency 9? So I know I might be keeping you a little longer. If you don't, we can do it next time. But if you do, we can jump in. Okay. First and the last one I give to everybody, but in between just a random selection. So the first one is, if you were on the Ryder Cup team, what would be your walk-up song?
My walk-up song would be, and I'm going into Spotify now because I actually run to it as we speak. It would be, because it's on all these reels, it would be Babel by Gustavo Brevetti.
Now that's an interesting one.
Babel. Spotify.
All right. For all the Irish folks out there, are you
Guinness.
more of a Guinness guy or a whiskey guy?
That was quick.
No, that was quick.
Guinness first, and after, if it's good, after about 12 pints, I go to whiskey. If it's bad, after about 3 pints, I go to whiskey. But whiskey is a quick second.
Not a bad. Let's see. Best course in Ireland that nobody talks about.
County Bell.
So everybody mark that down on your next trip to Ireland. Make sure to
the one
put
near
that on. They're
the
probably
whiskey
going to influx
distillery.
of people next summer.
So, there you go.
If you could change one rule in
When
golf,
your ball
what would it
lands in a
be?
divot.
Yeah, that seems to be a popular one right now. A lot of talk about that. You could sit and talk to anybody in history on a park bench. Who would it be?
Christy O'Connor Jr.
All right. The favorite thing you purchased in the last year under
Grayson
$500?
Montauk joggers. Got 2 pairs.
If you could buy stock in
Tommy
any
Gibbon.
golfer over the next 3 years, who's it going to be? I haven't heard of him. I thought I was pretty adept.
His challenge tour.
I'm assuming he's from
Hollywood,
Ireland.
Has proclaimed to and been in the media for being the next Rory McIlroy. Tom McGibbon will be the next Tom McGibbon. Yeah, he's in the challenge tour end of season championship this week in Mallorca to get his full card. So best luck, Tom. He's 19 years of age.
Well, we wish him all the best, and that's even more impressive. Everybody out there, give him a follow. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. With all the great ones, this might be a very difficult one to answer. And I don't want to put you in the spot to make anybody irritated, given where your home course is. But what's the best course in Ireland? Jeez, you got it quick. There's no hesitation on you. Everyone can tell you're a seasoned professional.
For Ireland, it's Royal Portrush. In Ireland, the Republic, we don't talk about politics, Waterville, down in Kerry, is my number one. Here you go.
So there's a couple more. So that's 3 for anybody going to Ireland in the next couple of weeks or next season to make sure you put on your list. And the last one, in your opinion, who's the greatest golfer of all time?
My opinion. I'd love to say something like Tiger Woods, 100% Tiger Woods. Yeah. I was trying to think, is it like Bobby Jones or Arnold Palmer? Probably Arnold Palmer. But in my life, that's made an impact on me in the world of golf, Tiger Woods.
Yeah, that one. It's generational for the most part, that answer to that question. It seems like anybody, probably the cutoff line would be about 45 or 50 and older, has gone with Jack Nicklaus. A couple Arnold Palmers, and anybody under that has gone, obviously, with Tiger.
No, but no
right or wrong answers.
I think the argument that if there was no Arnold Palmer, there wouldn't be a Tiger Woods.
I agree, 100%. All right, where can people go to follow you? Where's the best place? Let us know, and of course, links will be
my home address. That'll be a bit weird. Hasn't happened yet. At Paddy Talks Golf everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I aligned all of the handles. I got to do it in January this year. There was some empty profile in Asia with Paddy Talks Golf with no posts on Instagram, but it was deleted, I think, so I was able to pick it up. So at Paddy Talks Golf everywhere. Yeah, and paddytalksgolf.com if you don't do socials.
All right. And it's like I said, I listened to probably about 3 episodes. It's very interesting, especially anybody who has any interest in golf in Ireland. If you're going to go there or you're just a historian of the game, you want to know more, I can't recommend it enough. Pat, anything else that we missed that we should?
No, not really. I mean, if you can't get to Ireland, but want to have images of it, there'll be a little calendar launching on the website in a couple of weeks for 2023. I like to take pictures while I'm on course, something I'm getting better at. Well, I think I am. So it'll be the second year I'm doing a calendar. So we did over 50 this year because I launched it in mid-January, so it wasn't great timing for me. But who buys a calendar at the end of January? So they're launching a bit early this time, so people can get them as Christmas presents or whatever. They'll ship globally, so they should be up and ready in a couple of weeks when stock arrives. So yeah, paddytalksgolf.com for some Irish golf course calendars.
And as always, I will have the link to all of those sites in the summary. Everyone, you can get it in one click. Paddy, it's been great. If you would just stay on for a minute or two as we wrap up here. And I really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on. We're glad that we could connect.